The history of Half-Life. The impact and legacy of Half-Life simply cannot be overstated. It's responsible for PC gaming becoming mainstream. Although Doom was popular among PC gamers, it wasn't mainstream popular. It's also responsible for the existence of the Steam storefront and library, which literally changed the way people played video games, much like the way streaming services changed the way we interact with films and TV series. This is because Half-Life is responsible for the formation of the gaming company Valve, which owns and runs Steam. Talk about unforeseen consequences. In 1996, two Microsoft employees quit their jobs in order to start their own gaming company, which they named Valve. The two programmers, Mike Harrington and Gabe Newell, wanted to produce a horror-based first-person shooter with a focus on narrative. While that doesn't sound too innovative, it's important to state that no FPSs at the time had concentrated on any real narrative beyond kill enemies. Games like System Shock had toyed with the idea of using a 3D play space to tell their story, but this was normally reserved for the pensive and slow role-playing game genre, not the adrenaline-pumping, action-oriented FPS genre. Hiring a batch of designers and developers, Harrington and Newell oversaw the creation of their game. The first version of the game was inspired by Doom and Quake. In fact, Half-Life was originally slated to release at the same time as Quake 2, just so Valve could earn their spot in the big leagues. This seems almost ironic given that Half-Life literally used a licensed version of the Quake engine. However, the Valve version of the Quake engine had been tweaked and changed so much that there was barely a third of the original code left. This new version of the engine was called Gold Source, which is most likely why Valve's own 3D engine is called Source. Storyline-wise, the game drew heavy inspiration from the sci-fi anthology TV series The Outer Limits, specifically an episode named The Borderland. It was also at least partially inspired by the Stephen King novel The Mist. Valve even titled their as-yet unnamed game Quiver after a military base from the book. They soon renamed it Half-Life after a scientific term relating to the time required for the radioactivity of a material to reduce to half of its initial value. But Valve didn't just like how the name sounded, it also conveniently came with a pre-existing symbol, the Greek letter lambda, which is used in mathematical formulas to represent the constant rate of radioactive decay. Work on the game went well and it was finished on time, ready to go head-to-head with Quake 2. But there was a problem. For all the innovation shown in the game, it simply wasn't memorable or fun. Valve gritted their teeth and decided to give the game another year to develop. A core team of designers got together and created one large map which contained all the current mechanics, including certain puzzles and boss fights. This map was put through different iterations as the designers took notes directly from the players and implemented solutions to the issues raised by the playtesting. Then the cycle would begin again, over and over, until the developers had all the information they needed. This led to the creation of another core group which directed the overall progress of the game. 2 months before launch, the group lost all their work due to server issues. Thankfully, employees had been saving all their work independently as well, and they managed to overcome the hurdle in order to have the game ready for launch. And so, on November 19, 1998, Half-Life was unleashed upon the mostly unsuspecting gaming public. The game was amazingly well received and was even enjoyed by gamers who didn't normally enjoy first-person shooters. The mixture of in-world storytelling, as opposed to cutscenes which were standard at the time, and combat were a hit. It was something of a critical darling and sold much better than Valve had anticipated. But they remembered the amount of hassle they had selling the game to publishers for distribution. They managed to eventually land a contract with Sierra Online, who'd missed out on publishing Doom, and so they jumped at the chance to publish Half-Life, but this was strictly a one-time deal. Gabe Newell had an idea for a game storefront and library, purely so they could publish the now happening Half-Life 2 themselves. Newell directed a group of developers to develop Steam, while the rest of the crew got to work on Half-Life 2. In the meantime, a fledgling company named Gearbox Studios began developing a Half-Life spin-off named Opposing Force, where the player played from the Marines' point of view. This was well received, which would lead the way to Gearbox's next Half-Life game, Blue Shift, where the player played from the point of view of a guard named Barney Calhoun. Then came Half-Life 2, the first game to be released on Valve's new Source engine, and is considered to be one of, if not the best first-person shooter of all time. Half-Life 2 would receive 2 further episodes, aptly named Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Half-Life 2 Episode 2. The most recent Half-Life game is the VR-only Half-Life Alyx, which has also received critical acclaim, just like the rest of the Half-Life series. Which Half-Life is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and as always, geek out.